My thumb hovers over the red send button. 9 o'clock at night, and I'm sitting in my Ford F-250 with the engine idling, headlights off, invisible in the shadows of the Miller estate. Through the windshield, I can see them on the balcony, Preston and Genevieve, my parents, champagne glasses catching the light, their laughter carrying across the manicured lawn I used to mow for free. The phone screen glows. Project Oak Route. Execute eviction. My other hand grips the steering wheel so tight my knuckles have gone white. The truck smells like potting soil and diesel. Mud caked on the floor mats. My boots leave prints on the pedals. I was going to save you, I whisper to the windshield. But then I heard what you said. 12 hours earlier, I was pruning a Japanese maple when Genevieve called. No hello. No how are you doing? Delilah. Just her voice, sharp as pruning shears. I need you to bring the juniper bonsai tonight. I'd paused mid-cut, phone wedged between my shoulder and ear. The greenhouse was humid, glass walls fogged with condensation. My hands were still dirt-stained from repotting succulents that morning. The gala's tonight? I'd said. Obviously. 40 years of the Miller Art Gallery. We're expecting investors. A pause. Then the tone shifted to something I knew too well. Condescending. Patient. Like explaining arithmetic to a slow child. You owe us this much, Delilah. After everything. After everything. The words settled in my chest like stones. I'd looked at the bonsai then. 5 years of careful cultivation. Competition winner. Valued at $8,000. The branches twisted just right, each needle placed by nature and my patience. It sat on the display table in perfect afternoon light, roots anchored in soil. I'd mixed myself. It's not really appropriate for a centerpiece, I'd said. It needs specific conditions. Don't be difficult. Genevieve's voice hardened. We're cash poor right now and we need to impress the Vanderbilts. Bring the tree. 6 o'clock. She'd hung up before I could respond. I should have said no. Should have laughed and gone back to work. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there in my greenhouse, surrounded by 200 plants I'd grown from seeds and cuttings, owner of a business that cleared 6 figures last year. And I felt 14 again. 14, when I'd given up the art scholarship so Merrick could attend private school, when Preston had patted my shoulder and said, "That's my girl, family first." I'd never gotten another scholarship. Merrick got his architecture degree. The pattern? I'm always the helper. Never the helped. But maybe this time would be different. Maybe if I brought the bonsai, if I showed up and contributed something valuable, they'd finally see me. Really see me. Maybe this time they'll see me, I'd whispered to the empty greenhouse. Then I'd wrapped the bonsai in protective cloth and loaded it into the truck bed. By 6:15, I was pulling up to the Miller estate. Not the main entrance with its circular driveway and fountain. The service entrance. Around back, where the caterers parked. Merrick was waiting there, leaning against the brick wall in designer shoes that probably cost more than my monthly insurance payment. He watched me park, then walked over and kicked dirt off my front tire with the tip of his Italian leather. "Stay out of sight tonight," he said. "The adults are doing business." I'm 27, he's 30, but in his eyes, I'd seen it clearly. I wasn't an adult. I was the help. I'd bitten back my response and started unloading the bonsai. 40 pounds of tree and ceramic pot. I carried it alone while Merrick watched, hands in his pockets. While I positioned the truck, I'd glance toward the main entrance. The Vanderbilts were arriving early, stepping out of a black Mercedes. Old money recognizes desperate money. I'd seen it in the way they whispered to each other, the subtle eyebrow raise as Preston greeted them too loudly, laughing too hard. His tuxedo was nice, but I noticed the cuffs were slightly frayed. The family reputation was already cracking. Preston just couldn't see it. Genevieve appeared at the service door as I was carrying the bonsai up the steps. She didn't offer to help. Didn't even hold the door. "You're late," she said. "And couldn't you have worn something presentable?" I looked down at my work jeans, my flannel shirt. I'd come straight from a job site, hands still smelling like mulch. For a moment, I almost wavered. Almost considered driving home to change into something she'd approve of. Then I steadied. "I'm delivering a tree, Mother, not attending your party." Her face tightened, lips pressing into a thin line. But I didn't apologize. Didn't collapse into the old pattern of people-pleasing. Small victory. Preston appeared in the doorway behind her. He looked past me, eyes moving straight to the bonsai like I was invisible. "This will do," he said, inspecting the branches. "The Vanderbilts appreciate Eastern aesthetics." No thank you. No acknowledgement that I'd just given them an $8,000 centerpiece for free. Merrick followed us inside, smirking. At least she's useful for something. My hands trembled as I set the tree down on the main hall table. The realization cut clean and sharp. My family takes. They never give. They never give. Now, sitting in my truck in the darkness, I look at that phone screen again, my thumb still hovering. Through the windshield, Preston raises his glass. Genevieve laughs at something a guest said. They have no idea I'm out here. No idea what's coming. I press send. Another memory flashes back. 6:45. I'm positioning the bonsai on the main hall table, adjusting the angle so the twisted trunk faces the entrance. My fingers brush the lowest branch, checking moisture levels out of habit. The ceramic pot leaves a ring of condensation on the polished mahogany. That's when I hear them. Preston's voice carries from the private viewing room. The door is cracked open. A sharp whine of microphone feedback cuts the air, then settles. They're testing the sound system. Slide 14. Perfect. I freeze. Hands still touching the branch. The wood is smooth under my fingertips, bark worn soft from 5 years of careful training. Merrick's voice answers, amplified by the speakers. The visuals tell the story we need. Something in his tone makes my spine straighten. I should keep working. Should finish arranging the tree and leave through the service entrance like I'm supposed to. Instead, I move closer. The hallway mirror catches my reflection as I approach. Flannel shirt, jeans with mud stains on the knees, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. I look exactly like what I am, someone who works with her hands. The slideshow clicks. Once, twice. Through the crack in the door, I see the projection screen glowing bright in the dim room. Merrick stands there in a tailored suit, holding some crystal award. The photo caption reads, "The Visionary. Merrick Miller receives Architecture Excellence Award." Click. The next slide loads. It's me. I'm covered in pond muck, mud streaked across my face, kneeling beside a retention pond. Mid-laugh at something off camera. My work clothes are filthy. My hair is falling out of its tie. I look happy, completely unself-conscious. I remember when that photo was taken. Last spring. The Hendersons' backyard pond had clogged, and I'd spent 3 hours elbow-deep in algae and silt. Mrs. Henderson had laughed at something I'd said and snapped the picture. Said I looked like I was having the time of my life. Preston's voice breaks the silence. It's his presentation voice. Rehearsed, polished. The tone he uses when he's about to close a deal. We'll tell the investors. This is why we don't let children play in the dirt. A pause for effect. It proves we have standards. Merrick laughs. The sound echoes off the viewing room walls. Should we mention she charges people for this? He's really enjoying himself now. Actual money for manual labor. They're both laughing, practicing their timing, getting the rhythm right so the joke lands perfectly when the investors are watching. My breath catches. The bonsai branch slips from my fingers. Preston continues. The contrast is essential. Merrick's sophistication versus. Another calculated pause. Whatever Delilah is doing with her life. The words hang in the air. Clinical, precise. This isn't angry mockery. It's strategy. She's our cautionary tale, Merrick says. Visual proof that the Miller family has standards, that we recognize quality. The Vanderbilts will appreciate it, Preston adds. They'll see we're not sentimental about failure. My hand finds the wall. The plaster is cool, solid. I need something steady because the floor feels like it's tilting. This isn't about proving anything to me. It's not even really about me. I'm a prop, a before and after comparison. The photograph that makes Merrick look better by contrast. The photo will be seen by every investor in that room. By the Vanderbilts. By Newport's entire elite circle. They'll all laugh at the mud-covered girl who thinks she's worth something. I catch my reflection in the mirror again. Same flannel shirt. Same work jeans. But the woman looking back at me is different than the one who walked into this building an hour ago. Something crystallizes. Sharp and clear and absolutely certain. I don't want their approval anymore. The realization doesn't come with anger. Not yet. Just cold, perfect understanding. I'm not their daughter tonight. I'm their visual aid. My hands are steady as I walk back to the main hall. The bonsai sits on the table exactly where I left it. $8,000 of patient cultivation. 5 years of careful work. I lift it. 40 pounds of ceramic and soil and living wood. The weight settles familiar in my arms. No one sees me walk through the service corridor. The caterers are busy in the kitchen. The florists are arranging centerpieces in the side rooms. I push through the service entrance with my shoulder. A caterer glances up from her van. She's young, maybe 20. Her eyes go to my face, then to the bonsai. "Miss Miller, is everything all right?" My voice comes out level, measured. The centerpiece won't work after all. She sees something in my expression, doesn't ask questions, just nods and goes back to unloading champagne flutes. Small moment, but it matters. Human decency versus family cruelty. The difference is stark. The truck bed is exactly where I left it. I settle the bonsai carefully, wrap the protective blanket around the pot. My hands know this routine. I've transported this tree dozens of times. The engine starts on the first try. Through the windshield, I can see the main hall windows. The display table sits empty now. Just a ring of water condensation where the tree stood. The dashboard clock reads 7:15. Guests arrive in 45 minutes. My phone buzzes. Genevieve's name lights up the screen. I silence it. The tears come as I'm pulling onto Ocean Avenue. My hands shake on the steering wheel, adrenaline crashing through my system now that I'm alone. But underneath the tears, something else is forming. Something harder than grief, colder than anger. I didn't just take back a tree. I took back myself. By 7:45, I'm pulling into the gravel lot at Verdant Horizons. The commercial greenhouse glows amber in the dusk, interior lights reflecting off glass panels. My hands are still shaking on the steering wheel. The F-250's engine ticks as it cools. I sit there, staring at the building I built from nothing. 2 acres of glass and steel. 3 full-time employees. Last year's revenue, $847,000. None of it matters right now. Through the windshield, I see movement. Hank and Sarah are still here, working late on the Pemberton estate installation. Hank's loading river stones into the bed of the company truck. Sarah's coiling irrigation line. They spot my truck. Both stop mid-task. Hank walks over first, work gloves still on, concern already creasing his weathered face. He's 62, been with me since the beginning. "Boss, what happened?" I try to answer. My mouth opens. Nothing comes out. Sarah appears at the passenger window with a bottle of water, doesn't ask permission, just opens the door and hands it to me. She's younger than Hank, maybe 45, but has the same steady presence. The kind of person who knows when to speak and when to just be there. I take the water. My voice finally works. They were going to use me, in a slideshow, to mock me in front of investors. The words sound thin, inadequate. They don't capture the rehearsal. I overheard Preston's voice dripping with practiced humor, Merrick's laughter. Hank's jaw tightens. Sarah's hand finds my shoulder, warm through my flannel shirt. "Come inside," Sarah says. I follow them into the greenhouse. The air smells like peat moss and green growth. Rows of seedlings in their trays, each one labeled in my handwriting. This is real. This is mine. Not the Miller Art Gallery, with its borrowed prestige and unpaid debts. We walk to the workbench area. I lean against the potting table, still holding the water bottle. "I asked Silas to come," I say. "If things went bad tonight." "Good," Hank says. He pulls up a work stool, gestures for me to sit. I shake my head. Can't sit. Too much adrenaline. Then Hank does something unexpected. He kneels down in front of me and starts unlacing my boots. "You don't have to," I start. He pulls a rag from his back pocket and wipes the heavy muck from the leather. He doesn't make them new, just knocks off the filth. "Clean slate, boss," or close enough. The words hit somewhere deep. Preston never cleaned anything, never knelt for anyone, never showed care through action. Sarah's hand stays on my shoulder. They're both just waiting. Not demanding explanations, not rushing me, just present. The greenhouse door opens. Silas Thorne walks in carrying his leather portfolio, still in his suit from whatever courtroom he left early. He's 53, my corporate attorney for 4 years now. Sharp mind, sharper instincts. "Delilah." He sets the portfolio on the workbench. "Talk to me." So I do. The whole thing spills out. Genevieve's demand for the bonsai, the slideshow rehearsal, Preston and Merrick laughing about using my photo as a cautionary tale. The empty centerpiece table I left behind. Silas listens without interrupting. When I finish, he opens the portfolio and spreads documents across the workbench. Oak Root Holdings, LLC, he says. Sarah leans closer, studying the papers. What's Project Oak Root? Silas glances at me. I nod. 6 months ago, he explains. Preston's bank threatened foreclosure on the Miller estate. The property was leveraged beyond capacity. Delilah bought the distressed debt through a shell company I set up. Hank whistles low. You own their debt? $125,000 in unpaid back rent, I say. My voice sounds hollow. I'm their landlord. They never knew. Sarah's hand tightens on my shoulder. Not judgment, support. You were saving them, Silas says quietly. I thought if I proved myself successful enough. I stop. The sentence doesn't need finishing. They were never going to see you, Delilah. Silas's voice is gentle but firm. I've been telling you that for months. The truth lands like a physical weight. He's right. He's been right. I just wasn't ready to hear it. My phone buzzes. Genevieve. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answer and put it on speaker. Where's the tree? Her voice is shrill enough to make Sarah wince. Guests are asking questions. I took it home, Mother. Silence. Then the explosion. You selfish, ungrateful. The insults pour out. Trash, embarrassment, failure. Words she's probably thought for years, finally unleashed. Hank and Sarah stand perfectly still, witnessing. You've ruined everything, Genevieve spits. Don't bother coming back. She hangs up. The greenhouse goes quiet, except for the ventilation system's hum. Silas opens his laptop. I can email the eviction notice right now. His cursor hovers over send. I stare at the screen. The legal document is already prepared, professionally formatted, legally airtight. 6 months of planning reduced to 1 mouse click. Then I shake my head. An email is too easy. Silas looks up. They want to humiliate me publicly? My voice hardens. I need to look them in the eye when I take it all back. Sarah speaks first. What do you need from us? Say the word, boss. Hank's already standing straighter. Silas is already thinking tactically. The gala ends at 11. What are you planning? Process server. I meet his eyes. Can you arrange one? He smiles. Actually smiles. I know exactly the right person. The shift in the room is palpable. We're not grieving anymore. We're strategizing. I stand up straight, wipe my face with the back of my hand. Look at the 3 of them. My lawyer. My foreman. My forewoman. This is my real family. Not the people who share my blood but never my burdens. They wanted me invisible, I say. They're about to see me very clearly. Sarah walks to the office closet and pulls out a simple black dress, still in dry cleaning plastic. You left this here last month. After the Chamber of Commerce dinner. I take it, change right there in the greenhouse, not bothering with modesty. Sarah and Hank turn away out of habit, but Silas keeps working on his laptop, already briefing someone on the phone. The dress fits. Knee length, professional, unremarkable. Then I strap my boots back on underneath the hem. Silas ends his call. Process server will pose as a late arriving guest. Eviction notice is prepared. I'm thinking timing during the keynote presentation. Maximum impact, I say. This is some strategic thinking, boss. Hank grins. I learned from the best. I look at Silas. Just not from them. By 8:40, I'm climbing back into the F-250. The dress feels strange over my work clothes. The boots feel right. My phone screen glows. Project Oak Root. Execute eviction. Through the commercial district, I can just see the Miller estate on the hill. The balcony where Preston and Genevieve are probably standing right now. Champagne glasses raised, convinced they've won. Preston's arm is probably around her shoulders. They're laughing. They think I'm broken. I was going to save you, I whisper to the windshield. But then I heard what you said. My thumb hovers over send. I press it. The screen confirms. Process server dispatched. ETA, 9:45 p.m. I start the engine. The diesel rumbles to life, familiar and powerful. I'm not driving back as a victim. I'm driving back as a predator lying in wait. 9:20. I walk through the main entrance of the Miller Art Gallery for the first time in my life. The black dress Sarah pulled from the office closet fits well enough, skimming my knees, simple and severe. But underneath the hem, with each step across the marble floor, my heavy work boots thud softly. No more mud prints, Hank saw to that, but the battered leather looks violent against the polished floors. Ancient and scarred amidst a sea of patent leather and silk. Nobody notices yet. They're all too busy pretending not to stare at the centerpiece table. Someone has placed a generic crystal vase filled with store-bought white roses in the center. It looks small, pathetic even, against the grandeur of the hall. A desperate placeholder. The water ring from the massive bonsai pot is still faintly visible on the mahogany if you look past the cloth runner. The room is packed. Investors in dark suits cluster near the bar. The Vanderbilts occupy the corner table, their posture radiating the kind of judgment only old money can afford. Newport's elite scattered throughout, champagne glasses catching chandelier light. Genevieve spots me first. Her face does something I've never seen before. It contorts, twists through shock into pure rage, then smooths into a mask so quickly I almost doubt I saw it. She crosses the room in 4 seconds flat, heels clicking like gunshots. How dare you show your face? Her voice is low, venomous. Close enough that I can smell her perfume, expensive and cloying. I meet her eyes. I'm a Miller. This is a Miller event. Her hand clamps around my upper arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. You embarrassed us. That centerpiece cost us credibility. I don't pull away. Don't flinch. Did I? Or did you embarrass yourselves? Across the room, I catch the Vanderbilt matriarch watching us. Her expression is unreadable, but she's paying attention. They all are now. Genevieve's grip tightens. Then Preston sees me. He goes still, champagne glass halfway to his lips. His eyes find Merrick at the podium, and something passes between them, some silent agreement that makes my spine straighten. Preston moves toward Merrick with quick, urgent steps. They lean close, whispering. Merrick glances at me, and his smile is all teeth. They aren't waiting for the keynote anymore. I can see it in the way Merrick signals the AV technician, the way Preston's jaw sets with determination. They're moving up the schedule. They want to punish me now. Want to crush whatever brought me back here before I can speak, before I can explain the missing centerpiece. They need me broken in front of these investors. Merrick approaches the microphone. The feedback squeals once, and the room settles into expectant silence. Before we begin our formal remarks, he says, voice smooth and practiced, I'd like to share something with you all. The lights dim. The massive screen behind the podium illuminates, white and waiting. My heartbeat stays steady. I've been expecting this since I heard them rehearsing earlier. Since I understood exactly what they thought of me. Merrick's photograph appears first. Him in a tailored suit, accepting some architecture award, looking every inch the visionary they want him to be. Polite applause ripples through the crowd. Then my photo replaces his. I'm covered in pond muck, kneeling in wet soil, laughing at something Hank said off camera. My hair is plastered to my forehead. My hands are black with earth. The joy on my face is unguarded, genuine, completely unaware I was being photographed. The room ripples with uncomfortable laughter, not cruel yet, but uncertain. Waiting for context, Merrick leans into the microphone. Some of us build legacies. He pauses for effect, gestures to his award photo. Others just dig holes. The laughter grows louder, more confident now that they understand the joke. Preston steps up beside Merrick, taking the microphone. This is what happens when you reject education. I stand in the center of the room. The spotlight finds me somehow. Probably Merrick's doing. Every face turns toward me, and I feel the weight of their judgment, like physical pressure. This is the moment they've been building toward. Complete exposure. Total humiliation. I bow my head slowly. Let my shoulders slump. Let my hands clasp in front of me, fingers twisting together like I'm trying to hold myself together. To Preston, to Genevieve watching from the side, to Merrick at the podium, I look exactly how they need me to look. Broken, defeated, remembering my place. Preston and Genevieve exchange glances across the room. Triumph gleams in their eyes, bright and hungry. Merrick smirks from the podium, leaning back like he's already won. At the bar, I catch them in my peripheral vision. Preston reaches for his champagne, and Genevieve meets him there. They clink glasses with the delicate sound of crystal on crystal. Preston leans close to her, whisper carrying just far enough for me to hear. She needed to remember her place. Genevieve sips, her lipstick leaving a mark on the rim. Maybe now she'll appreciate what real success looks like. They're drunk on it. The perceived power. The certainty that they've put me back in the box where I belong. Their guard is completely down. Near the Vanderbilt table, an older woman in pearls frowns at the screen. She leans toward her companion, stage whispering. Seems unnecessarily cruel. The Vanderbilt matriarch's face is stone. No smile, no approval. Just that careful neutrality that speaks volumes if you know how to read it. But Preston doesn't notice. He's too focused on me, on my bowed head and slumped shoulders. His arrogance blinds him to the way the room's mood is shifting, the subtle discomfort spreading through the crowd. I keep my head down. Keep playing the part. Then I check my watch. 9:43. I lift my gaze slowly, scanning the room until I find Silas near the entrance. He's dressed like any other guest, dark suit blending in perfectly. Our eyes meet across the crowded space. I give him the smallest nod, barely a movement at all. He nods back. Steps aside from the doorway. The door opens behind him. A man in a dark suit enters, moving with purpose. He doesn't look around, doesn't hesitate. Just walks forward like he knows exactly where he's going. I let my expression settle. Let something cold and final move behind my eyes. Preston turns back to the podium, oblivious. He takes the microphone from Merrick, smiling at the crowd with complete confidence. Now, about our investment opportunity, he begins. The man in the dark suit keeps walking toward the stage. My scuffed boots stay planted on the marble floor, and I don't move. Preston stands at the podium like a king surveying his kingdom. The stage lights catch the silver threading in his tuxedo jacket, and he's smiling that practiced smile I've seen 1,000 times. The one that says he's already won. The Miller family, he begins, voice smooth as aged whiskey, represents 3 generations of refined taste. I'm still standing in the center of the room where the slideshow left me. Head bowed, shoulders slumped, playing defeated. But I'm watching the door. A man in a dark suit enters. He moves with purpose, not the casual drift of a late guest. The fabric of his jacket is quality but unremarkable. He could be anyone. Merrick notices him first. I see my brother's frown from across the room, the slight tilt of his head. He doesn't recognize the man. Neither does Preston, who's still talking about legacy and vision and all the empty words that built their hollow empire. The process server walks down the center aisle. His shoes are quiet on the polished floor. Dark suit blending with the other guests, but his trajectory is unmistakable, straight toward the stage. Preston stops mid-sentence, looks up, annoyed. He leans into the microphone. Excuse me, this is a private event. The server doesn't stop, doesn't acknowledge the words at all, just keeps walking, steady as a metronome. Preston's irritation bleeds into his voice. Sir, you need to leave. The room goes quiet, conversations dying like candle flames in wind, everyone turning to watch. The server reaches the stage steps, climbs them one at a time. Preston's face flushes red. His voice sharp now, amplified through those JBL speakers mounted in the corners. Get the hell off my stage, you peasant. Gasps ripple through the crowd. I see the Vanderbilts exchange glances, eyebrows raised. There it is, the desperation, the crack in the veneer. But Preston doesn't notice. He's too focused on this perceived threat to his authority. Do you know who I am? This is my gallery, my event. The microphone catches every word, broadcasts his rage to every corner of the room. The server stops 3 feet from Preston. When he speaks, his voice is calm, professional. But he's close enough to the podium that the microphone picks it up, amplifies it. I know exactly who you are, Mr. Miller. He reaches into his jacket. Preston flinches. But what emerges is just a legal envelope. Cream-colored paper, official seal, visible even from where I'm standing. I am representing Oakroot Holdings. Preston's face shifts from anger to confusion. Oakroot what? You are being served with an immediate eviction notice. The words hang in the air like smoke. I watch them register across the room. See the way heads turn, mouths open slightly. The server continues, and each word is a hammer blow. For $125,000 in unpaid back rent. The number echoes. $125,000. 6 figures. The kind of debt that destroys reputations. Behind Preston, my mud photo is still projected on the screen. Delilah covered in pond muck, laughing. But the context has shifted. Flipped completely. Because the mud girl holds their six-figure debt. Preston's face drains of color. All that righteous anger bleeding away into something else. Something that looks like fear. The Vanderbilts stand. Both of them, moving in sync. They place their napkins on the table with precise, deliberate movements. Then they walk toward the exit without a word. Not running. Old money doesn't run. But they're leaving. Avoiding contamination from this scandal. Other investors follow. I watch the social suicide happen in real time, exactly like Silas warned. The thing Preston feared most, manifesting right in front of him. "This is a misunderstanding," Preston stammers into the microphone. His voice has lost all its polish. "There's been some kind of mistake." The server's voice cuts through his protests. "Your lease is terminated effective immediately due to chronic non-payment. You have 48 hours to remove personal belongings." Genevieve's heels click on the floor. She's rushing toward the stage, dress swishing around her legs. "Who owns Oak Root? I demand to know." But the server isn't finished. Legal ownership transferred to Oak Root Holdings 6 months ago. All correspondence regarding the debt was sent to your attorney of record. Preston grabs for the papers. His hands are shaking so badly the envelope crumples. He stares at the documents like they're written in a foreign language. I start walking. Not rushing. Just steady steps toward the stage. The crowd parts for me without being asked. Their faces have changed. They're not looking at the mud girl anymore. They're seeing someone else entirely. I reach the base of the stage. Stop there. Look up. Preston's eyes meet mine. I watch the realization dawn across his face. See the exact moment he understands. His whisper barely carries, even with the microphone. "You?" I don't apologize. Don't explain or justify or make excuses. I just hold his gaze for 3 long seconds. Let him see everything he missed, everything he dismissed. Then I turn on my heel. The black dress swirls around my legs, and my battered work boots are visible for just a moment. The boots I wore on purpose, the boots I never apologized for. Silas falls in beside me as I walk toward the exit. His hand touches my back briefly. Steady, supportive. At the door, I pause. Turn back to face the room. The investors are frozen, watching. Preston is collapsed in a chair. Merrick stands beside him, looking lost. Genevieve's mouth is open, mid-scream. My voice carries across the silent room without needing a microphone. Clear. Calm. Final. The lease was always clear. I'm not your daughter right now. I let the silence stretch. Let them all hear what comes next. I'm your landlord. Then I walk out. Behind me, Genevieve's scream finally breaks free, the sound of someone watching their world crumble. The ruins of their ego scattered across that polished floor like broken glass. The door closes behind us. Silas and I step into the cool night air. I don't look back. 9 o'clock the next morning, and Genevieve's Mercedes pulls up to verdant horizons like she still owns the world. But she's wearing flats, not the Louboutins she'd had on last night. Flats. I notice from inside the greenhouse, hands deep in potting soil, repotting a Japanese maple that doesn't need my attention right now but gives me something to focus on besides the car door slamming. Hank intercepts her at the entrance. I hear his voice through the open windows, flat and professional. "Boss isn't taking visitors." "I need to speak with my daughter." Genevieve's voice cracks on the word daughter. Her makeup is smudged. She's wearing yesterday's dress, wrinkled across the bodice. I set down my pruning shears and wipe my hands on my jeans. Step into the doorway where she can see me. "We need to talk," she says. Her eyes are red. "We're family." I don't look up from the branch I'm examining. Family doesn't humiliate family publicly. The shears make a clean snip, precise. A small branch falls to the workbench. "Your father is devastated." She takes a step closer. Hank shifts his weight, blocking her path subtly. "Merrick won't speak to anyone. How can you do this to us?" Snip. Another branch. "I'm shaping the maple into something beautiful, something that will take years to fully mature. Patience and discipline. We raised you better than this." That one almost gets me. Almost. But I've heard this song before. The guilt, the manipulation, the assumption that I owe them something beyond the $125,000 they never paid. I set down the shears, wipe my hands clean on a rag, reach into my back pocket and pull out a business card. edges already worn from carrying it around since last night, knowing she'd come. I walk to the door and hand it to her. Bankruptcy attorney. Local, good reputation. The lease was clear, Genevieve. I don't call her mother. Payment terms were generous. 6 months of missed payments. We thought you'd understand. I'm not your daughter right now. The words taste clean in my mouth. True. I'm your landlord. She stares at me. Her hand trembles holding the card. And you're trespassing. She turns and leaves without another word. And I am left alone, thinking how I will never let anyone destroy what I have built. 3 months later, I'm standing on the balcony watching workers take down the Miller Art Gallery sign. The metal scrapes against brick, and I feel nothing. No satisfaction, no bitterness. Just the morning sun, warm on my shoulders, and the weight of my own building beneath my boots. Verdant horizons, headquarters. Sarah reads from the new sign as workers hoist it into place. Never thought we'd have offices with a view. Hank joins us, coffee in hand. He passes me a cup without asking if I want one. He knows I do. Boss, the $8,000 bonsai looks perfect in the window. I glance back through the glass. The juniper sits in the main office, backlit by eastern sun, every needle visible. 5 years of work, competition winner. Finally displayed where people can see it, where it deserves to be seen. It deserves to be seen, I say. Silas arrives with his leather portfolio, footsteps echoing in the new space. Preston and Genevieve signed the settlement this morning. Merrick moved to Boston. No forwarding address. I nod. Take a sip of coffee. The information lands without weight. They're gone, and I'm still here, and that's enough. The office walls behind me hold photographs now. Completed landscapes. Happy clients standing in gardens I designed with my own hands. No family photos. The mud crew. Silas. The people who chose me. That's family enough. Business is thriving. 3 new commercial contracts signed last week. After Silas leaves and the crew goes back to work, I stand alone on the balcony at sunset. Look down at my boots, still dusty from this morning's site visit. Still caked with honest dirt. I remember Preston's slideshow joke. Just dig holes. The smile comes without bitterness. Those holes became gardens. That mud built this. Behind me, the bonsai catches the last light through the window. Its shadow falls across my shoulders like wings spreading. Dark and certain. I reclaimed my garden, I whisper. My phone buzzes. New client inquiry. I answer without hesitation. Verdant horizons. Delilah Miller speaking. My name. No apology in it. No shame. Just mine. The building gleams in twilight around me. Same balcony where they stood laughing, mocking the mud girl. Now mine. Openly. Legally. Completely. I clutch grandmother Lila's hand-knit scarf, rubbing the soft yarn between my fingers as if somehow the texture might summon her spirit back. The funeral parlor smells like artificial flowers and furniture polish. I've tucked myself away in the corner chair, watching my family perform their version of grief. Mom dabbles at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, letting out occasional theatrical sobs that echo against the mahogany paneling. Every few minutes, she slips to the bathroom, emerging with freshly applied mascara and her phone clutched in her perfectly manicured hand. The soft click of her camera captures her sorrowful pose beside the gleaming casket for her social media followers. This lighting is terrible, she mutters, reviewing the photos. Dad stands near the entrance, his voice rising as he argues with the funeral director. These charges are completely unreasonable, he snaps, tapping furiously at his phone screen. My stock alerts don't stop just because... He glances around, lowering his voice. Just because we're having a family situation. A family situation. That's what death is to my father, an inconvenient interruption to checking his investment portfolio. My brother Cole slouches in a chair across the room, head bent over his phone, thumb scrolling endlessly. The glow from his cryptocurrency app reflects in his glasses. He hasn't looked up in 20 minutes, not even when distant relatives approach to offer condolences. I close my eyes and remember the weekends at Grandma and Grandpa's house. The smell of cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings. Grandpa Walter teaching me to change the oil in his first delivery truck, his hands steady as they guided mine. Hadley girl, he'd say. Knowing how things work matters more than knowing how to buy new ones. A tear slides down my cheek. A real one. Later, we gather in Aaron Feldman's office. the family attorney's wood-paneled sanctuary lined with leather-bound law books, and the faint scent of pipe tobacco. Mom immediately claims the central chair, arranging herself like she's posing for a portrait. Dad stands behind her, hands on the chair back, assuming the position of authority. I was thinking we could list the harbor house immediately, Mom says, inspecting her nails. The market's peaking, and that view will fetch a premium. The boat should sell quickly too, Dad adds, nodding. And those antiques. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Cole interrupts, actually looking up from his phone. I've already got buyers interested in Grandpa's truck fleet. My startup could use that capital. Aaron clears his throat, silencing the vultures. He looks at me briefly, something unreadable flickering across his face. He pulls out a thick document, placing it deliberately on his desk. As executor of Walter and Lila Monroe's estate, he begins, his voice formal. I'm required to read their final wishes exactly as written. My family leans forward expectantly. Aaron adjusts his glasses and begins reading, his tone measured and precise. Legal phrases wash over us until he reaches the critical line. He pauses, takes a breath, and continues. I hereby bequeath my entire estate, valued at approximately $31.5 million, to my granddaughter, Hadley Elizabeth Martin. The silence that follows feels like the moment before a storm. I blink, certain I've misheard. The entire estate? Dad repeats, his voice dangerously quiet. There must be some mistake, Mom says, her social media smile vanishing. Cole stands abruptly. What did you do? He demands, glaring at me. How did you manipulate them? The accusation stings worse than if he'd slapped me. I didn't. My voice catches. I had no idea. Aaron raises his hand for silence, then reaches for his computer. Walter and Lila anticipated your reaction. They prepared this. He turns the screen toward us. Grandma and Grandpa appear, sitting together on their porch swing. They look tired but resolute. If you're watching this, Grandpa begins, then our decision has come as a shock to some of you. Grandma's gentle voice continues. Gregory, Serena, Cole, we've watched how you speak about us when you think we're not listening, how you plan for our money while we're still living. My throat tightens as memories flood back. Being dropped off at their modest-looking home, which apparently concealed millions while my parents attended networking events. Teenage me helping Grandpa maintain his small fleet of trucks that were apparently the Bruce foundation of a shipping empire. Grandma teaching me to bake, to garden, to live with purpose rather than pretense. Hadley is the only one who ever loved us for ourselves, Grandma says, her eyes welling, not for what we could give her. The video ends. Aaron closes his laptop with quiet finality. In the parking lot, Dad corners me against my car, his breath hot on my face. You'll transfer control to me tomorrow, he says, voice low and dangerous. You can keep 12%. Darling, Mom coos, appearing at his side, her concern as manufactured as her grief. This kind of money requires experience to manage. You simply aren't equipped. Cole looms behind them. Remember what family loyalty means, Hadley. Remember who takes care of who. I grip my keys tightly, feeling the metal bite into my palm. I need time to think. I manage, voice trembling but firm. Dad's face darkens. Remember who owns your apartment building, Hadley. Remember who can make one phone call and leave you homeless. They walk away, a united front of entitlement. I stand frozen, keys digging into my skin, the weight of $31 million, and my grandparents' trust pressing down on me like a physical force. That night I pace my tiny studio apartment, panic clawing at my chest. Everything I own fits in this room. My life as a school counselor barely covers rent. I have no savings, no backup plan. I sink onto my bed, fingers still clutching Grandma's scarf, when a pounding at my door makes me jump. Management inspection, a gruff voice calls. My phone rings. Aaron's name flashes on the screen. Hadley, he says urgently when I answer. They're planning to lock you out. It's illegal, but they might try. You need to leave. Now. Tears blur my vision as I throw essential items into a backpack, my hands shaking so badly I can barely zip it closed. I never imagined that inheriting a fortune would leave me feeling more vulnerable than I've ever been in my life. But as I grab Grandma's scarf and wrap it around my neck, her voice seems to whisper in my ear. Stand your ground, Hadley girl. Some things are worth fighting for. The following day, rain pelts the windshield as I pull up to Grandma and Grandpa's Gig Harbor home. The sprawling craftsman sits back from the road, wrapped in cedar and stone, modest in design, despite its waterfront location. Nothing like the gleaming modern mansions that have sprung up around it over the decades. I sit in the car, watching raindrops race down the glass, my heart hammering against my ribs. 24 hours ago, I was fleeing my apartment with a backpack of essentials. Now I'm about to enter a house worth millions that somehow belongs to me. The front door opens before I reach it. Miguel Alvarez stands in the entryway, his weathered face solemn. For 15 years, he's managed this estate, becoming more family than employee. Miss Hadley. His voice breaks slightly. Welcome home. I step inside, dripping onto the worn oak floors. The house smells like lemon oil and cinnamon, just as it always has. Your grandmother asked me to give you this. Miguel extends a small brass key. If things went this way. He leads me to Grandpa's study, where a heavy antique desk dominates the room. The key fits a bottom drawer, revealing a weathered leather journal bound with a faded ribbon. She said you would understand when the time came. Miguel squeezes my shoulder before leaving me alone. I curl into Grandpa's reading chair by the fireplace, tucking my feet beneath me as I open the journal. The first entry is dated 10 years ago. Gregory came today asking for another loan. Claimed his investment was guaranteed to triple within months. When Walter hesitated, he reminded us how expensive Cole's college tuition is becoming. We wrote the check. Walter suspects we won't see that money again. My stomach tightens. I flip forward several months. Gregory hasn't mentioned repayment. When I asked, he acted as if I'd forgotten he'd already repaid us. Walter says to let it go. It's only money, he says, but it's the pattern that worries me. I turn page after page, my fingers trembling. Serena brought designers to help update the house today. They measured rooms and took photos while she pointed out how tired everything looks. Later, I caught her photographing the silver service from Walter's mother. She jumped when she saw me, saying she wanted inspiration for her anniversary party decorations. The door creaks open. June Porter, housekeeper for over 20 years, enters with a tray of tea. Her eyes are red-rimmed. You're reading Mrs. Lila's journals. It's not a question. Did you know about all this? I gesture to the open pages. June sets down the tray. I kept records of my own. Mrs. Lila asked me to. She disappears, returning with a banker's box. Financial documents. Loan agreements your father never repaid. Startup proposals from your brother, all defaulted. She places a thick folder on top. And these are copies of property transfer documents your mother tried to get Miss Lila to sign 3 months before she passed. Claimed they were updated estate plans recommended by their advisor. I spread the papers across the desk. Thousands of dollars funneled to Dad's failing ventures. Cole's repeated requests for seed money that never produced results. Mom's attempted property transfers that would have quietly moved ownership before death. They were bleeding them dry. I whisper. For years, June confirms. Your grandfather insisted on believing the best of his son. Your grandmother was more clear-eyed. I find an entry from Christmas 2 years ago. Cole had too much wine at dinner. When he thought Walter and I had gone to bed, I overheard him telling Gregory, when the old folks die, we're set for life. Gregory laughed. Our grandson laughed about our deaths. My throat constricts. I remember that Christmas I'd worked double shifts to afford the train ticket home. Mom complained about my shabby sweater at dinner while Cole showed off his new designer watch. The doorbell rings. June glances at her watch. That'll be Mr. Shaw and Miss Park. Marcus Shaw enters first, carrying a leather portfolio, his normally composed face tense. As Grandpa's financial advisor for 20 years, he's the only one who truly understood the extent of their wealth. Hadley, he says, taking my hand. I've brought the complete portfolio. You need to understand what you're protecting. Evelyn Park follows, her silver hair pulled back severely. Grandpa's business partner at Summit Freight for 3 decades, she carries a stack of company records. Summit employees are reporting strange visitors, asking questions about shipping routes and client contracts. She says without preamble. Someone's digging. Aaron arrives last, legal documents tucked under his arm. I've prepared preliminary protective measures. We need to move quickly. They gather around the dining room table, forming a circle of protection I never knew I'd need. Each brings a piece of the puzzle, revealing the empire my grandparents built and how methodically my family has tried to dismantle it. My phone buzzes. Dad's voice fills the speaker when I play the voicemail. You have no idea what you're up against, Hadley. This can still end with everyone happy, or it can get very ugly. Your choice. While we're strategizing, the doorbell rings again. A courier delivers a manila envelope with no return address. Inside are my childhood photos with faces crossed out in red marker. This is escalating quickly, Aaron says, bagging the photos as evidence. Summit employees are reporting strange visitors. Your brother has started posting about your mental instability online. Your mother has called your workplace with family concerns. My hand shakes as I set down my teacup. What do we do? File for emergency protective orders, Aaron says, pulling out prepared documents. The evidence is overwhelming. Judge Carter will approve them immediately. There's something else, June says. Miss Lila set aside the cottage in Port Orchard in a separate trust. It's not part of the main estate. Somewhere safe if you need it. I think about my students, the kids who count on me showing up every day. I'll need to take a leave of absence from work. The weight of it all suddenly crashes down. I walk to Grandma's garden, now glistening with rain. Her roses will bloom soon without her to see them. I never wanted their money, I whisper to the wet earth. I just wanted them. But as I look back at the house where my unexpected allies wait, I realize Grandma and Grandpa gave me more than money. They gave me the truth, and people who will help me protect it. 3 days into my new old home, my morning coffee goes cold as I stare at the newspaper. The headline glares back. Family contest suspicious inheritance. My hand trembles as I scan quotes from unnamed family sources, claiming Grandma Lila suffered from diminished capacity during her final months. They're really doing this, I whisper to the empty kitchen. My phone buzzes with a text from Aaron. Gregory filed an emergency petition with the court, claims Lila was mentally incompetent when signing the will. Call me, claims Lila. Before I can dial, a notification pops up. Mom's smiling face fills my screen, a screenshot from the local morning show where she dabbed theatrical tears while describing her concerns about elder exploitation. The caption reads, "Heartbroken daughter speaks out about suspected elder abuse." The walls of Grandpa and Grandma's house, my house, now seem to press inward. I set the phone down, breathing deeply the way I tell my students to when anxiety overwhelms them. Miguel knocks gently before entering. "Miss Hadley, you should see this." He hands me his tablet, open to a social media page Cole created overnight. Justice for the Monroe Legacy. Already 400 followers. People I've known my entire life commenting about their concerns. Summit Freight called, Miguel adds, his weathered face solemn. 3 clients received anonymous letters, questioning the company's stability. They're attacking from every angle. My voice sounds distant, unfamiliar. Your grandfather anticipated this. Miguel gestures toward the study. Perhaps it's time you saw his business journals. In the oak-paneled study that still smells faintly of Grandpa's pipe tobacco, I open the leather-bound journal from 1987, the year Summit Freight nearly went bankrupt during the recession. Grandpa's neat handwriting fills the page. Third bank rejected our loan application today. Lila says we should sell the house. I won't risk our home. When everyone says you'll fail, that's when you find your backbone. Tomorrow I'll speak with the drivers about a temporary pay arrangement until we weather this. I touch the page, feeling the indentations his pen made decades ago. The words blur as tears well up. There's more, Miguel says, opening Grandma's desk drawer. He removes a small USB drive. Mrs. Lila installed security cameras last year. She never told your parents. On Grandpa's computer, I watch footage dated the day of the funeral. Dad and Cole, methodically moving through rooms, checking values on their phones, wrapping smaller items in their coats before leaving. Mom photographing silver and antiques, wiping away fake tears between shots. They were stealing, I whisper, while pretending to grieve. Mrs. Lila knew. She kept records of everything. The security system chimes, interrupting us. Miguel checks his phone. They're at the gates, all of them. My heart hammers against my ribs as I move to the front window. 3 vehicles idle outside the wrought iron gates. Dad's Mercedes, Mom's Range Rover, Cole's Tesla. Should I call Aaron? Miguel asks. I straighten my shoulders, remembering Grandpa's words. Finding your backbone. No, I'll handle this. The intercom crackles. Dad's voice, professional and commanding. Hadley, open the gates. We're here to collect family heirlooms that rightfully belong to all of us. I press the speaker button. I'll meet you at the front steps. Summer sun beats down as I stand alone on the wide limestone steps. The gates swing open automatically. I want witnesses to whatever happens next. Dad strides forward first, briefcase in hand, expression controlled but eyes flickering with calculation. Mom follows, camera ready in a tasteful black dress, while Cole lingers slightly behind, shoulders hunched. This has gone far enough. Dad announces, projecting his voice like he's addressing a boardroom. We're here for great-grandmother's silver service and the Tiffany lamps to start. For that. Those items were specifically listed in the will as part of my inheritance, I say, my voice steadier than I feel. A will we're contesting, Mom interjects, her practiced concern slipping. Sweetheart, you're in over your head. Let us help manage things until the courts sort this out. Cole steps forward suddenly, attempting to move past me up the stairs. I'll just grab my stuff from my old room while we're... He freezes as lights flash and a low hum fills the air. The new security system Aaron installed activates, red indicator lights blinking along the perimeter. Trespassing prevention measures, I explain quietly. The property is now monitored by multiple cameras streaming to a secure server. Mom gasps dramatically, clutching her chest before slowly sinking onto the manicured lawn. My own daughter, treating family like criminals. The crunch of gravel announces new arrivals. Miguel approaches from the side of the house, carrying a leather binder. Miss Hadley, I've brought the complete inventory of household items as you requested, with provenance documentation. Miss Hadley? June's compact figure appears next, her gray hair neatly pinned back. I witnessed them taking items after the service. She announces loudly. I've provided a sworn statement to Mr. Feldman. A silver sedan pulls up behind my family's vehicles. Evelyn Park, Grandpa's business partner of 30 years, steps out, followed by 5 longtime Summit employees in company polos. We came to show support. Evelyn says clearly. Walter and Lila built this company on integrity. We stand by their wishes. Aaron's BMW glides to a stop next. He exits with a leather portfolio. Ah, perfect timing. I was just coming to update Hadley on the restraining order, but since you're all here, I can serve these papers directly. Dad's face reddens as Aaron approaches with documents. Mom remains sprawled on the grass, her theatrical collapse forgotten as she watches the growing audience with calculation in her eyes. From the street, a cluster of people gather, neighbors, friends of my grandparents, watching quietly, finding strength I didn't know I possessed. I step forward. This ends today. My voice carries across the suddenly silent driveway. Every word spoken here is being recorded, every action filmed. You've shown who you really are, and now others are seeing it too. A news van slows at the property entrance, logo visible on its side. Who called the media? Dad snarls, his composure cracking. We did, calls Mrs. Henderson from across the street, waving her cell phone. Neighborhood watch. We look after our own. For the first time since Grandma's death, I see real fear in my father's eyes. He glances at the growing crowd, the cameras, the papers in Aaron's hand. This isn't over, he mutters, but he's already retreating toward his car. Mom miraculously recovers from her fainting spell, hurrying after him with one worried glance at the news van. Cole hesitates, looking at me directly for the first time. Something unreadable crosses his face before he follows our parents. That night, I stand alone in my grandparents' bedroom, untouched since their passing. Grandma's knitting basket sits beside her reading chair, needles protruding from an unfinished blue scarf. Grandpa's reading glasses rest on his nightstand, folded neatly beside a half-read mystery novel. The grief I've been holding at bay crashes over me. I sink onto the edge of their bed, clutching one of Grandma's knitting needles. I don't know if I can be what they believed I could be, I whisper into the emptiness. Dawn finds me still there, watching light gradually filter through lace curtains. Grandma made herself. Something settles in my chest, not peace exactly, but resolve. Later that morning, the team gathers in Grandpa's study, Aaron with legal folders, Marcus with financial projections, Evelyn with Summit operations reports. I take Grandpa's seat at the head of the table, no longer feeling like an imposter. We need comprehensive plans. I tell them, not just defending against their attacks, but building something sustainable. I've prepared injunctions against further legal harassment, Aaron begins, sliding documents across the polished surface. Marcus taps his tablet. I've secured the accounts and investments with additional verification protocols. Summit's employee meeting went well, Evelyn reports. Once they understood your commitment to maintaining operations and jobs, morale stabilized. We're not just defending, I say, echoing Grandpa's steady voice in my memory. We're building. A soft knock interrupts. June enters, carrying a dusty cardboard box. Found this in the attic storage. Thought you should see it. The box label, in Grandma's neat handwriting, reads simply, "In case of Gregory." Inside lie decades of meticulously organized materials, letters, recorded conversations, financial records, dated and cataloged with my grandmother's characteristic precision. At the bottom, wrapped in acid-free paper, lies a small leather-bound book. My breath catches as I gently lift it out. "Is this what I think it is?" I whisper. June nods, her eyes knowing. "Mrs. Lila said you'd recognize it when the time came." I hold Grandpa Walter's original business ledger from 1962, the founding document of Summit Freight, containing the legal framework that would make challenging the will nearly impossible. Our meeting adjourns with new determination. For the first time since the inheritance bombshell, I feel not just Grandpa's backbone, but my own. A week later, I am preparing to defend what's legally mine and protect my grandparents' legacy. I sit at Grandpa Walter's antique oak desk, running my fingers over the worn edges where his hands rested for decades. The leather chair still holds the impression of his body, a physical memory that comforts me as I lift the phone receiver for what feels like the 100th call today. Mr. Delgado. Yes, this is Hadley Martin. I appreciate you taking my call. I straighten my posture, channeling Grandpa's quiet confidence. I'd like to discuss the expansion of the profit-sharing program for Summit's drivers, effective immediately. The morning passes in a blur of meetings, each one another piece of the plan we've crafted. Summit Freight employees file into the study throughout the day, weather-worn drivers with calloused hands, office staff with curious eyes, mechanics with grease-stained fingers. Each leaves with shoulders a little straighter, eyes a little brighter. My grandfather believed a company is only as strong as the people who build it daily, I tell the gathered department heads. Starting next month, every employee participates in the expanded profit-sharing program. Healthcare coverage increases to include dependents. The education fund doubles. Evelyn hands out the detailed packets, while Marcus projects the financial models showing long-term sustainability. The room erupts in applause, genuine and warm, nothing like the hollow social media applause my mother craves. "Dr. Reynolds," I say later, phone pressed to my ear as I review the community needs assessment spread across the desk. The foundation wants to focus first on vocational training scholarships. My grandfather believed in the dignity of skilled trades. The foundation expert on the other end speaks excitedly about implementation timelines. I jot notes in the margins of the assessment, circling areas of greatest impact. My phone buzzes with a text from Aaron. Gregory contacted 3 major clients directly, claiming family concerns about Summit's stability. I exhale slowly, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest. The desk phone rings minutes later. Summit's operations manager reporting that Mom showed up at my school, cornering the principal with concerns about Hadley's state of mind. "Principal Kovacs didn't buy it," he assures me. "Said your mother seemed more unstable than you ever have." A knock at the door reveals Miguel, his expression grim as he holds a sealed package. This was delivered by courier, no return address. Inside, a thick folder labeled "Evidence of Manipulation" contains photos of me with my grandparents, annotated with dates and suspicious questions. Email printouts of supposed psychological assessments. Medical records with highlighted passages suggesting my undue influence. I flip to the last page and burst into unexpected laughter. They've accidentally included their own threatening emails to Grandma Lila from last year, complete with Gregory's signature block and legal threats when she refused to transfer property titles. "They're getting desperate," Aaron says when I call him. "Good thing we anticipated this." The next morning dawns clear and cool as I prepare for the Chamber of Commerce luncheon. Dad had planned this moment for weeks, according to our sources, a public confrontation where I'd be forced to defend myself among the business elite of Gig Harbor. "Ready?" Evelyn asks as we pull into the country club parking lot. Marcus adjusts his tie. "Remember, stay calm no matter what. We've got this covered." The banquet room falls quiet as we enter. Gregory's face darkens when he spots us, his body tensing like a predator preparing to pounce. I feel dozens of eyes tracking our progress to the reserved table. I've barely taken my seat when Dad approaches, his voice pitched to Carrie. "There she is, the girl who's destroying our family legacy. Walter would be ashamed of what you've done to Summit Freight." Before I can respond, Chamber President Jack Wilson stands, tapping his water glass. Actually, Gregory, we're recognizing Summit Freight today for 40 years of business integrity and community service. Walter Monroe established this award, and we're honored to present it to his chosen successor. The room erupts in applause as Jack gestures for me to join him at the podium. My legs feel wooden as I rise, acutely aware of Dad's reddening face and Mom's frozen smile. My grandparents built Summit Freight on two foundations. I say, accepting the Crystal Award, excellence in service and investment in people. Their legacy isn't measured in dollars but in lives improved. The standing ovation washes over me in waves. Former drivers share stories of Grandpa helping them through tough times. Charity directors praise Grandma's quiet generosity. The community college president announces the new vocational scholarship program, funded by the Monroe Foundation. Later, Aaron's press release detailing Summit's employee protections makes the evening news, alongside statements from June and Miguel about my parents' treatment of my grandparents in their final years. The effects ripple through town like stones dropped in still water. Gregory's business partners request distance. Mom's social circle excludes her from fundraising galas. Cole's startup investors withdraw after learning of the pattern of financial manipulation. The country club board puts their membership under review. I refuse every interview request, every opportunity to criticize them publicly. We focus on building, not tearing down. I tell Miguel when he brings me the latest invitation from a morning show. The first crack appears 3 nights later. My phone rings at 11:36 p.m. Mom's ringtone. Hadley, she sobs, voice thick with what sounds like genuine emotion. This isn't what I wanted. You have to believe me. I say nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. Your father. She begins, then stops. I never meant for things to go this far. The second crack forms in a text from Cole the next morning. Dad's losing it. I didn't know about the loans he took in my name. Can we talk? Just us? Gregory's attorney calls Aaron the next day, requesting a meeting without Gregory present. They're imploding, Aaron tells me afterward. Their united front is crumbling. That night, I sit on the porch swing where Grandma and Grandpa spent countless evenings, my journal open on my lap. The pen hovers over the blank page before finally touching down. Victory feels hollow when it's family. But what's the alternative? Surrender the legacy they entrusted to me? Allow the exploitation they fought to prevent? The breeze carries the scent of Grandma's roses, planted decades ago but still blooming faithfully each year. Standing your ground doesn't always feel triumphant, but sometimes it's the only way to honor what matters most. A week later, I called my parents for the final confrontation. I position Walter's antique pocket watch on the polished conference table, a silent timekeeper for today's showdown. The grandfather clock in the foyer chimes 10 as car doors slam outside. They're here. Ready? Aaron asks, straightening his tie. I nod, smoothing Grandmother Lila's scarf between my fingers. As ready as I'll ever be. Miguel opens the front door, his face professionally neutral, as he escorts my family into the home they tried to strip bare, while Grandma and Grandpa were still warm in their graves. Dad strides in first, confidence faltering only when he spots Judge Elaine Carter at the table. Mom follows, her camera-ready smile freezing when she notices Daniel Brooks, former police chief and Grandpa's fishing buddy, standing near the window. What is this? Dad demands, stopping short. We agreed to a family meeting, not a public tribunal. We agreed to mediation. I correct him. These are the mediators I've selected. Cole slips in last, eyes darting between our parents and me, tugging at his collar. For a fleeting moment, our eyes meet, and something like shame flickers across his face. Mom glides toward me, arms outstretched. Darling, surely we can speak privately first? Family matters should stay within. Family matters should involve actual family, I interrupt, my voice steadier than my racing heart. Please sit down. Dad's face darkens to a dangerous crimson. I refuse to participate in this circus. Either clear the room or we're leaving. We proceed with transparency or not at all, I say, gesturing to the chairs. Your choice. After a tense standoff, they sit. Aaron slides folders in front of each person with practiced precision. Exhibit A, he announces, tapping his laptop. The television screen on the wall illuminates with security footage. Walter and Lila, Monroe's home, the evening after the funeral. The video shows Dad and Cole loading paintings into Dad's SUV under cover of darkness. Mom can be seen carefully wrapping silver candlesticks in her scarf. Cole shifts uncomfortably. Mom's hand flies to her throat. Family heirlooms we were safeguarding, Dad says, dismissively, but his voice lacks conviction. Exhibit B. Aaron clicks forward. Financial records appear, each one highlighting unpaid loans to Dad's failed ventures, totaling over $4 million. Exhibit C. Aaron continues methodically through each damning piece of evidence. Mom's attempt to transfer property deeds while Grandma was hospitalized. Cole's string of defaulted startup investments, recorded phone conversations plotting asset division before Grandpa had even passed. With each revelation, Dad's rage builds visibly. His knuckles whiten around the folder edges. Mom's carefully constructed victim persona crumbles, mascara tracking down her cheeks. Cole stares at the table, shoulders hunched. Judge Carter makes notes without expression. Daniel shifts slightly closer to Dad when his breathing becomes dangerously rapid. Finally, Aaron opens Grandma's leather journal. In Lila Monroe's own words, dated the 14th of June last year, Gregory demanded another $100,000 today. When I reminded him of the previous unpaid loans, he suggested we wouldn't want Cole to know about certain family matters. I recognize the threat. Walter and I have decided, Hadley is our only hope for preserving what we've built. The room falls silent except for Mom's quiet sobbing. You manipulated them, Dad accuses, his voice trembling with fury. You turned them against us. No, I reply, my calm surprising even me. Your own actions are speaking for themselves. I slide a document forward. This is my offer. A small trust fund for each of you, conditional upon returning all items taken from this house, and ceasing all communication attempts with me, or anyone associated with Summit Freight or the Monroe Foundation. Dad laughs bitterly. Or what? Or I press charges for theft, elder abuse, and attempted fraud, I answer, all documented in triplicate, and witnessed by a sitting judge and former chief of police. You've turned everyone against us. Dad explodes, slamming his fist on the table. No, Dad, I say, meeting his eyes directly. Your own actions have done that all by themselves. The grandfather clock ticks loudly in the silence that follows. 10 minutes pass before Dad snatches the pen Aaron offers. The scratching of signatures feels like closing a book. As they leave, Cole hesitates at the doorway, looking back with an expression I can't quite read. For a moment, I think he might stay, might choose differently. Then Dad barks his name, and he follows them out. When the door closes, I exhale shakily. Aaron squeezes my shoulder. Judge Carter nods with approval. Daniel's weathered face breaks into a smile. Walter would be proud, he says quietly. Standing your ground isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing when enough is enough. I touch Grandma's scarf, still wrapped around my neck. I never wanted their money, I whisper. I just wanted to be family. I know, Aaron says. That's exactly why your grandparents trusted you with everything they built. Outside, engines start, car doors slam. They drive away, and something in me knows it's for the last time. I am my grandparents' legacy now, not their money, their values. And some boundaries, once set, must never be crossed again. 6 months after the final confrontation, I still arrive at school by 7:30, my counseling office, a sanctuary of listening ears and steady advice. The brass nameplate Hadley Martin, student counselor, remains the title I cherish most, despite the trust documents bearing words like executor and beneficiary. This morning, a small clipping from the business section sits on my desk. Summit Freight announced record profits under its new employee ownership model. Walter's trucks still rumble through town, but now 68 drivers have stakes in their futures. Miss Martin? My assistant pokes her head in. Your foundation guests are here. The Delilah and Walter Monroe Foundation exists on paper and in $12 million of carefully allocated funding, but today marks something more tangible: our first scholarship recipients. 5 students wait nervously in the conference room, clutching acceptance packets. Their eyes widen as I explain how the Vocational Training Fund works: full tuition, living stipends, and guaranteed apprenticeships. My grandparents believed in building things that last. I tell them, now you're part of that legacy. Later, I drive the familiar road to the harbor house. The property feels different now, lighter somehow, as if the weight of secrecy has lifted. I park beside Evelyn's sensible sedan and Marcus's old Volvo. Inside, the The dining room table that once witnessed my family's greed now hosts a celebration. June sets out Lila's china, while Miguel arranges Walter's prized chess set nearby. Remember our first meeting here? Aaron asks, helping with water glasses. You could barely speak without trembling. Hard to believe that was the same person who stared down Gregory Martin at the gates. Evelyn laughs. I run my fingers along the table's edge, remembering. Same house, same people, different Hadley. We toast with sparkling cider when Marcus announces the Foundation's first major project, a 3D printing laboratory for the community college's technical program. Lila and Walter would be so proud of what you've built, Miguel says, his eyes misting. That night, I flip through my therapy journal, tracing the path from panic attacks to purpose. Pages filled with grief exercises give way to recipes June has taught me from Lila's collection. Notes on Walter's favorite chess openings occupy margins near pressed flowers from the cottage garden. The old cat, Professor, finally allows me to stroke his ears as he settles on Lila's favorite chair. 6 months ago, he hissed whenever I entered the room. Progress comes in many forms. My phone buzzes with a familiar area code. Gregory's business has finally collapsed, and he needs a small bridge loan. 3 hours later, Serena emails her application for the Foundation's board of directors. Before bed, Cole texts about his newest startup. This one is different, I swear. The pattern remains unchanged. My response does too. Polite, firm refusal. On my 30th birthday, I'm surprised by a gathering at the cottage. No extravagant gifts, just thoughtful tokens, a vintage edition of my favorite book, Seeds from June's Garden, a handmade scarf. Evelyn raises her glass. To choosing your family by their actions, not their blood. Aaron updates us on the permanent legal protections now in place, while Marcus outlines the Foundation's growing community impact. The following Tuesday, a sophomore sits in my office, describing family pressure that echoes my past. They say I owe them, she whispers, that everything they've done was for me. I listen with understanding born from experience. When she finishes, I hand her a carefully prepared packet therapy options. Legal resources, boundary-setting worksheets. Your worth isn't measured by their approval. I tell her, words I needed to hear 6 months ago. At sunset, I walk the property grounds, stopping at the newly planted grove, 1 tree for each scholarship recipient. A small bench bears a simple plaque, Legacy Lives Through Love, Lila and Walter. I open Lila's journal to its blank final pages and begin writing my own entries. Looking up at the warm glow of house lights, I feel a peace that money could never purchase. The inheritance that matters most wasn't in the bank accounts after all.
After our parents passed away, my older brother kicked me and my 5-year-old child out into the freezing rain. He laughed and told me to enjoy being homeless because he made sure I got absolutely nothing. But he had no idea that at the will reading the very next day, he would be the one fainting on the floor when the lawyer read the final section. My name is Elise, 33 years old, and I work as a bioinformatics analyst. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had a toxic family member try to destroy your life only to watch karma handle them perfectly. The heavy thud of my suitcase hitting the wet pavement echoed through the freezing Chicago rain. The funeral for our parents was just yesterday. The soil on their graves was not even settled yet, and here I was standing in the driveway of the $8 million family estate. My 5-year-old son Leo clutched my leg, shivering against the biting wind. Standing on the grand covered porch was my 38-year-old brother Preston. Beside him stood his wife Jasmine. Jasmine, a stunning African-American woman who spent her days obsessed with country club memberships and designer labels, had her arms crossed over her expensive cashmere sweater. She sneered down at us, looking as though we were nothing more than trash left on her pristine driveway. Leo whimpered, and his small raincoat slipped from my grip, landing on the bottom step of the porch. Before I could reach down to grab it, Preston stepped forward and deliberately kicked the bright yellow jacket straight into a muddy puddle. I gasped, pulling Leo closer to my side to shield him from the cold and from the cruelty of his own uncle. "The free ride is over, Elise," Preston spat, pointing a manicured finger at me. "Mom and Dad are dead. That means your time of leeching off this family and this house is officially done. I am the sole legal heir to this estate. Get off my property before I call the police and have you escorted away for trespassing." Jasmine leaned against one of the massive stone pillars, swirling a glass of wine. "Honestly, Elise, it is embarrassing," she said, her voice dripping with fake pity. "You are a single mother who sits at a computer all day typing up data or whatever nonsense you call a career. Preston is a wealth management director. He is the pride of this family. You have always been the stain they tried to hide. Now pack up your little brat and go find a shelter." I stared at the two of them, feeling the icy rain soak through my clothes. I did not scream. I did not cry. I tightened my grip on Leo's small hand, ensuring he felt safe despite the monster standing on the porch. They thought my job as a bioinformatics analyst was a joke, a lowly tech job that barely paid the bills. They had spent my entire life treating me like the scapegoat, while Preston paraded around as the golden child, squandering money and pretending to be a successful businessman. But they had absolutely no idea how much I actually earned or the brilliant, quiet life I had built for myself away from their toxic spotlight. "Do not speak about my son," I said, my voice steady despite the freezing rain. "And do not pretend you have won anything yet, Preston. You are throwing us out the day after the funeral. That shows exactly what kind of man you are." Preston scoffed, walking down one step so he could tower over me. "I am a man who protects his assets. You really thought Mom and Dad were going to leave a piece of this mansion to a single mother with a fake science job? I made sure they signed everything over to me. You get nothing, not a dime. Now get out of my sight before things get ugly." I looked at the house I had grown up in. The massive windows, the perfectly manicured lawn, the heavy oak doors that were now closed to me. For years I had endured their snide remarks at Thanksgiving dinners, their subtle jabs about me being a single mother, their relentless boasting about Preston's high society life. My parents had often stayed silent to keep the peace, avoiding confrontations with Preston because his temper was unpredictable. But I knew the truth about my parents, and more importantly, I knew the truth about the legal documents locked away in the family lawyer's office. I did not need to beg. I did not need to fight for a spot on that porch. I picked up Leo's muddy coat from the puddle, shook off the dirty water, and held my son's hand tightly. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone to arrange our departure. I opened my banking app to quickly transfer some funds to my checking account so I could order a premium rideshare. But as the screen loaded, a glaring red error message popped up. "Account frozen." I frowned, refreshing the app. Another error message. A loud, mocking laugh echoed from the porch. I looked up to see Preston waving a manila folder in the air. "Having trouble getting a car, Elise?" he yelled over the sound of the rain. I took the death certificates to the bank first thing this morning. I froze all the joint family accounts. Every single one of them. You cannot touch a penny of Mom and Dad's money. Jasmine giggled, leaning her head against Preston's shoulder. "Looks like you will be taking the bus, Elise. Make sure Leo does not drip mud on the seats." They honestly thought they had trapped me. For years I had kept a joint account with my parents to help them manage their household bills when their health started failing. Preston assumed that was my only source of money. He assumed my job as a bioinformatics analyst paid a miserable entry-level salary. He had always called me a glorified computer geek. He had no idea that analyzing massive genomic datasets for private pharmaceutical companies paid an incredibly lucrative salary. I did not panic. I simply closed the banking app and opened my digital wallet. I pulled out my physical wallet just to make a point, slipping my sleek, heavy metal black credit card out from the leather slot. It was an exclusive invitation-only card that required a massive annual spend and an even larger income to maintain. I tapped it against my phone screen, linking it directly to the Black Car Service app. I ordered a luxury SUV to our exact location. Preston watched me, his smug smile faltering slightly as he tried to figure out what I was doing. "Who are you calling the homeless shelter?" he taunted, though his voice lacked its previous confident punch. "I am calling my ride," I replied, slipping the heavy metal card back into my pocket. Less than 3 minutes later, a pristine jet-black luxury SUV rolled smoothly up the long driveway, its headlights cutting through the gray storm. The driver, wearing a sharp suit, immediately stepped out with a large umbrella, hurrying over to shield Leo and me from the freezing rain. Jasmine's jaw dropped. She recognized the elite car service immediately. It was the exact same company she constantly begged Preston to book for her country club events, the one he always claimed was too expensive for casual use. "How are you paying for that?" Preston demanded, taking a step down the porch stairs, the manila folder slipping from his grasp. "Your accounts are frozen." "Your accounts are frozen, Preston," I corrected him, letting the driver take my soaked suitcase and place it gently into the spacious trunk. "My personal accounts are perfectly fine. Enjoy the house. I will see you at the lawyer's office." I climbed into the warm leather interior of the SUV, pulling Leo onto my lap and wrapping a dry towel the driver offered around his shivering shoulders. As the car smoothly reversed down the driveway, I looked out the tinted window one last time. Preston and Jasmine were standing in the cold, staring after us, with expressions of pure confusion and sudden terrifying doubt. They thought they had ruined me, but they were about to learn that they had just sealed their own destruction. The luxury SUV glided through the rain-soaked streets of Chicago, leaving the sprawling estate and my toxic brother far behind. Leo had fallen asleep against my shoulder, the exhaustion of the past few days finally catching up with him. I stroked his hair, feeling a fierce protective instinct settled deep in my chest. Preston and Jasmine honestly believed they had cast us out into the gutter. They had no idea I had been leasing a stunning 3-bedroom penthouse in one of the city's most exclusive high-rises for the past 6 months. I had kept my living arrangements a complete secret from my family. My parents had been ill, and I spent most of my time at the estate, caring for them, taking the brunt of their declining health, while Preston made brief, performative appearances, just long enough to complain about the medical bills. I had leased the penthouse as a sanctuary for Leo and myself, paying the exorbitant rent easily with my bioinformatics salary. The driver pulled up to the sleek glass entrance of my building. A uniformed concierge immediately stepped out with a large umbrella, greeting me by name and helping with my suitcase. We rode the private elevator up to the top floor. Walking into the penthouse, I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for days. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping, unobstructed view of the glittering Chicago skyline. The space was immaculate, secure, and entirely ours. I carried Leo to his room, gently tucking him into his warm bed, and then poured myself a glass of water. The battle was far from over, but we were safe. The next morning, the real war began. I woke up early, made Leo a stack of pancakes, and sat down at the kitchen island with my coffee to check my phone. My screen was flooded with notifications. Dozens of text messages, missed calls, and social media alerts. I opened Instagram first, and my blood boiled. Jasmine had posted a long dramatic essay accompanied by a black and white photo of my parents' funeral. She had tagged every single member of our extended family, along with half the members of her precious country club. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. "It is truly heartbreaking to witness the greed of some people during times of immense grief," Jasmine wrote. "Yesterday, right after we laid my beloved in-laws to rest, Preston's sister Elise attempted to extort us for money. When we refused to drain the family accounts to fund her irresponsible lifestyle, she threw a massive tantrum, grabbed her poor child, and stormed off into the rain. Preston and I begged her to stay, offering her a roof over her head despite her erratic behavior, but she chose pride over her own son's safety. Please pray for little Leo. We are heartbroken, but we must stay strong to protect the family legacy." The audacity of her lies was staggering. She painted me as an unstable extortionist, and Preston as a benevolent savior. She even managed to weave in her fake concern for Leo to maximize the sympathy from her high society followers. I clicked over to my text messages. The flying monkeys had been dispatched. My phone was a war zone of incoming attacks from aunts, uncles, and cousins who had swallowed Jasmine's story without a single question. Aunt Brenda sent a scathing paragraph. "How could you be so selfish, Elise? Your brother is grieving and you demand money. You have always been a disappointment to your parents." Uncle Richard followed up with his own venom. Do not bother coming to the family reunion this year. You are a disgrace. Preston is trying to hold the estate together and you act like a spoiled brat. You need psychiatric help. My cousin pointed out that I should be ashamed of putting Leo in danger just to throw a tantrum. They were relentless. Years of Preston spinning narratives at family barbecues while I was busy studying or working had solidified my role as the unstable failure in their eyes. They loved tearing me down. It made them feel superior. I watched the notifications roll in one after another, each more vicious than the last. A younger, weaker version of me might have cried. I might have frantically typed out paragraphs of defense begging them to believe the truth, posting screenshots of my own to clear my name. But I was not that girl anymore. I was a 33-year-old woman who analyzed complex genetic algorithms for a living. I knew how to look at data, remove the emotional noise, and execute a flawless strategy. Arguing with fools on the internet was a waste of my time. I locked my phone screen, took a calm sip of my coffee, and dialed the one number that actually mattered, Mr. Caldwell. He was 65 years old, a sharp, seasoned estate lawyer who had managed my parents' legal affairs for over 2 decades. He picked up on the second ring. Elise. He said, his voice grave but surprisingly steady. I was hoping you would call. I assume you have seen the circus your sister-in-law is orchestrating online. I am currently the most hated woman in the family, I replied smoothly. Preston froze the joint checking accounts and kicked me out of the estate yesterday. He thinks he won the entire board. Mr. Caldwell let out a low, dry chuckle that surprised me. Let them celebrate Elise. Let them type their little posts and gather their sympathy. Preston has always been a fool who plays checkers while thinking it is chess. I leaned forward, lowering my voice so I would not wake Leo. What exactly is going on, Mr. Caldwell? Preston acted so confident about the inheritance. He practically guaranteed I was getting nothing. Your parents were many things, Mr. Caldwell said slowly, but they were not blind. In their final years, they saw exactly who your brother had become. They saw his greed, his wife's obsession with status, and how cruelly they treated you and Leo. They came to me 3 years ago with a very specific, very ironclad set of instructions. A shiver of anticipation ran down my spine. So the will reading on Friday. Do not engage with the relatives, Mr. Caldwell instructed firmly. Do not respond to Jasmine's posts. Ignore every single text message. Keep your hands clean and your head high. You just show up to my office this Friday at 10 in the morning for the official reading of the will. Dress well. He paused, and I could practically hear the satisfying smirk on the old lawyer's face. Your parents knew exactly who Preston was. The trap is already set, Elise. Just wait until Friday. I hung up the phone and looked out over the city. A slow, genuine smile spread across my face. Preston and Jasmine thought they had written the final chapter of my life. They were about to discover they had just authored their own ruin. I poured the rest of my coffee down the sink, feeling lighter than I had in months. Friday could not come fast enough. Friday morning arrived with clear, crisp skies. I woke up feeling a profound sense of calm. The frantic anxiety that Preston and Jasmine had expected me to suffer was completely absent. I dressed with deliberate care. I bypassed my usual comfortable work clothes and pulled out a sharp, tailored navy suit I had purchased after a major stock payout. I paired it with simple, elegant heels. I looked exactly like what I was, a highly successful, independent woman who did not need a single dime from anyone. I dropped Leo off at his elite private preschool, giving him an extra tight hug. He was safe, oblivious to the storm brewing in our family, and that was all that mattered. I then hailed a private car to downtown Chicago, stepping out in front of the towering glass skyscraper that housed Mr. Caldwell's law firm. The receptionist guided me to the executive conference room at the end of the hall. The heavy mahogany doors were already open. I walked in to find Preston and Jasmine treating the legal office like a VIP lounge. Jasmine was practically vibrating with excitement. She wore a bright red designer dress that screamed for attention, clutching a luxury handbag on her lap. But it was her wrist that caught my eye. She was wearing my late mother's vintage gold Rolex. It was a family heirloom, something my mother had explicitly told me she wanted to pass down to a granddaughter one day. Jasmine had clearly rated my parents safe before the funeral was even over. She caught me looking at it and intentionally adjusted her sleeve to show it off more prominently, flashing a wicked, triumphant smile. Preston slouched in a leather chair at the head of the table, looking like a king waiting for his crown. He wore a custom suit and was actively scrolling through his phone, likely looking at luxury cars or real estate expansions. When he saw me enter, he let out a loud, theatrical sigh. "Look who decided to show up," Preston sneered, tossing his phone onto the polished wooden table. "Did you walk here, Elise? I heard the homeless shelters downtown are at full capacity right now. I hope you brought a sleeping bag for you and the kid." I did not take the bait. I pulled out a chair opposite them, sat down and folded my hands neatly on the table. "You should save your energy, Preston," I said, my voice perfectly level. "You are going to need it." Jasmine let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "Oh, look at her pretending to be brave. It is pathetic. We know you are broke, Elise. Everyone in our social circle knows what a disaster you are. You tried to extort us and it failed. Now you get to sit here and watch Preston inherit the empire while you get absolutely nothing." Mr. Caldwell entered the room through a side door carrying a thick leather binder. His face was a mask of absolute professional detachment. He did not offer any warm greetings or sympathetic platitudes. He simply took his seat at the center of the table, adjusted his glasses, and opened the binder. "We are here for the reading of the last will and testament of your parents," Mr. Caldwell stated, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "This document supersedes all previous versions and was finalized with full medical clearance and psychiatric evaluation to ensure absolute legal binding. It is uncontestable." Preston leaned forward, practically salivating. "Skip the legal jargon, Caldwell. Just get to the assets. Let us get this over with so I can call my real estate broker." Mr. Caldwell gave Preston a look that could freeze water. "I advise you to listen carefully, Preston. I will read this exactly as written." The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading the formal declarations. I watched Preston tap his foot impatiently while Jasmine gripped his arm, her eyes wide with greedy anticipation. "To my eldest son, Preston," Mr. Caldwell read aloud, his voice steady and clear. "I leave the primary family estate, the property located in the northern suburbs, including all attached acreage and fixtures." Preston threw his hands up in a silent cheer. Jasmine actually squealed, leaning over to kiss his cheek. "We did it, baby," she whispered loudly. "The house is ours." Mr. Caldwell did not stop. "Furthermore, to Preston, I leave the entirety of Adams Wealth Management, including the corporate name and its associated operational licenses." Preston slammed his hand on the table in pure ecstasy. "Yes, the company and the house." He turned his gaze to me, his face twisted into a mask of pure malice. "Do you hear that, Elise? I own it all. I am the sole owner of the estate and the business. You are officially erased from this family. I am going to make sure you never get a job in this city again. You are nothing." I did not flinch. I kept my eyes locked on Mr. Caldwell. The lawyer had not closed the binder. He was waiting patiently for Preston's outburst to conclude. Mr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses again, looking over the rim at my brother. "Preston, I strongly advise you to sit back and remain silent until I have finished. The inheritance of these assets comes with specific binding encumbrances." Preston rolled his eyes, leaning back in his chair with a heavy sigh. "Fine. Read the fine print. Probably just some property taxes. I will pay them out of the company accounts by tomorrow afternoon." Mr. Caldwell turned the page. The rustle of the thick paper sounded incredibly loud in the quiet room. "The estate property inherited by Preston is subject to a reverse mortgage, executed 36 months prior to our passing." Mr. Caldwell read, his tone completely flat. "The current outstanding debt, which has accrued significant compound interest, is due immediately upon the execution of this will. The total balance owed to the bank is exactly $9.2 million. The blood drained from Preston's face so fast he looked physically ill. The arrogant smirk vanished, replaced by a look of sheer terror. What he choked out. $9 million. That is a mistake. The house is only worth $8 million. It is not a mistake, Mr. Caldwell replied coldly. Your parents extracted the total equity of the estate to fund other ventures. Failure to satisfy this $9.2 million debt within 30 days will result in immediate foreclosure asset seizure and personal bankruptcy for the inheriting party. You are legally responsible for this debt as of today. Jasmine gripped the table, her knuckles turning white, her eyes darted wildly between Preston and the lawyer. Preston, what is he talking about? You said we were rich. You said we owned the house free and clear. Shut up, Jasmine! Preston snapped, panic bleeding into his voice. He slammed both hands on the table, glaring at the lawyer. Fine, whatever. I inherited Adams Wealth Management. The company handles multi-million-dollar portfolios. I will just liquidate some corporate assets and cover the reverse mortgage. It is a minor setback. Mr. Caldwell shook his head slowly, almost pityingly. You inherited the corporate name and the operational licenses, Preston. That is all. What do you mean that is all? Preston demanded, his voice cracking. Where are the client accounts? Where is the liquid capital? Adams Wealth Management was legally gutted 3 years ago. Mr. Caldwell explained, delivering the final crushing blow. All liquid assets, client portfolios, intellectual property, and real estate holdings were legally transferred out of the corporation. You inherited an empty corporate shell. It has zero operating capital. It has zero assets. It has zero clients. You just inherited a worthless name and a $9 million debt that will bankrupt you before the end of the month. The silence in the conference room was absolute. The ticking of the wall clock sounded like a bomb waiting to go off. I watched my brother realize that the empire he had spent his entire life bragging about was nothing but an illusion designed to ruin him. After our parents passed away, my older brother kicked me and my 5-year-old child out into the freezing rain. He laughed and told me to enjoy being homeless because he made sure I got absolutely nothing. But he had no idea that at the will reading the very next day, he would be the one fainting on the floor when the lawyer read the final section. My name is Elise, 33 years old, and I work as a bioinformatics analyst. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had a toxic family member try to destroy your life, only to watch karma handle them perfectly. The silence in the conference room was absolute. The ticking of the wall clock sounded like a bomb waiting to go off. I watched my brother realize that the empire he had spent his entire life bragging about was nothing but an illusion designed to ruin him. Preston's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The realization was suffocating him in real time. He looked like a man who had just stepped off a cliff and was waiting for the ground to rush up and meet him. Jasmine finally broke the silence, her shrill voice echoing off the mahogany walls. This is a joke, she shrieked, slamming her luxury handbag onto the table. You are lying, Caldwell. They had millions. Where is the actual money? Where are the stocks? The offshore accounts? Mr. Caldwell did not flinch at her outburst. He calmly adjusted his glasses and looked down at the final page in the heavy leather binder. I am not finished, he stated coldly. There is one final section to this document. I highly recommend you both sit down and listen. Preston slumped back into his chair, his hands trembling violently. His arrogant posture was completely gone, replaced by the panicked fidgeting of a trapped animal. Jasmine remained standing, glaring at the lawyer, but she clamped her mouth shut. 3 years prior to their passing, Mr. Caldwell read, his voice slicing through the heavy air. Your parents executed a complete liquidation of all tangible asset stock portfolios and the operational capital of Adams Wealth Management. The total sum of these liquidated assets, amounting to exactly $40.5 million, was transferred into a generation-skipping irrevocable trust. Preston's eyes darted toward me, a sickening realization beginning to dawn on his pale face. The sole exclusive beneficiary of this trust is my grandson, Leo. Mr. Caldwell continued reading the exact words my parents had signed. Furthermore, the sole trustee granted absolute, uncontestable, and unilateral control over the entirety of this $40 million fund is my daughter, Elise. The entire room froze. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded neatly on the table, maintaining eye contact with my brother. Elise has full discretion over the disbursement, investment, and management of these funds. Mr. Caldwell concluded, closing the thick binder with a definitive thud. This trust is irrevocable. It cannot be contested, challenged, or altered by any party under any circumstances. This concludes the reading of the will. For 10 agonizing seconds, nobody moved. Then the reality of the situation crashed into Preston all at once. He was bankrupt. He was $9 million in debt. He was facing immediate foreclosure. And the sister he had thrown out into the freezing rain, the sister he had mocked and degraded his entire life, was now sitting across from him with absolute control over $40 million. Preston let out a strangled, wheezing sound. He clutched his chest, his breath coming in short, rapid gasps. His face turned an alarming shade of gray. Jasmine asked, her anger suddenly replaced by genuine panic. "Preston, what is wrong?" He tried to stand up, reaching out blindly as if to grab me, but his legs gave out completely. Preston's eyes rolled back in his head and he collapsed forward like a felled tree. His head slammed hard against the thick edge of the glass conference table before his entire body hit the floor with a sickening thud. He was completely unconscious. Jasmine let out a blood-curdling scream. She dropped to her knees beside him, frantically shaking his shoulders. "Call an ambulance! Somebody call an ambulance! He is not waking up!" She shrieked, her perfect socialite facade entirely shattered. Mr. Caldwell calmly picked up the desk phone and pressed a button to summon his reception staff to call emergency services. He did not look panicked. He looked like a man who had just successfully executed the final wishes of his clients. I stood up slowly, smoothing the wrinkles from my tailored navy suit. I reached across the table and picked up my sealed copy of the trust documents, sliding them neatly into my briefcase. "You did this!" Jasmine screamed at me from the floor, tears ruining her expensive makeup. "You planned this, you psychopath! You stole our money!" "I did not steal anything, Jasmine," I said, my voice as calm as a winter morning. "I am just a bioinformatics analyst. I sit at a computer all day. You two are the financial geniuses. Enjoy your $9 million debt." Without waiting for the paramedics to arrive, I turned and walked out of the conference room. I strode past the panicked receptionist, stepped into the private elevator, and descended to the lobby. The crisp Chicago air felt incredible against my face as I stepped outside. I hailed a car and headed back to my penthouse. I had a son to pick up from preschool and $40 million to manage. Over the next 48 hours, silence reigned. There were no more social media posts from Jasmine. There were no hateful text messages from the extended family. The flying monkeys had completely vanished. Word of Preston's massive debt and my absolute control of the estate had clearly leaked through the grapevine. The very relatives who had called me a disgrace just days ago were now dead silent, likely terrified of angering the woman who held the keys to the family fortune. Preston spent 2 days in the hospital recovering from a minor concussion and a severe panic attack. But waking up in a hospital bed was only the beginning of his nightmare. The bank wasted no time. The moment the death certificates were processed, the reverse mortgage became due. The foreclosure countdown had officially begun. Sitting in my sunlit penthouse watching Leo build a complex tower out of magnetic blocks, I knew Preston and Jasmine would not just accept defeat. Cornered animals are the most dangerous. They were losing their mansion, their status, and their future. They needed money, and I was the only one who had it. Since the trust was ironclad and legally untouchable, they could not attack the money directly. They had to attack the only vulnerability I had. They had to go after the beneficiary. They had to go after Leo. I was in the middle of analyzing a massive genomic dataset on my dual monitors when the heavy authoritative knock echoed through my penthouse. It was not a polite tap. It was the loud, demanding pounding of law enforcement. I glanced at my security camera feed on my tablet. Standing outside my double doors were 2 serious-looking individuals in business casual attire, holding clipboards flanked by a uniformed Chicago police officer. I felt a cold spike of adrenaline, but my logical mind instantly took over. I took a deep breath, walked to the foyer, and pulled open the door. "Elise Adams," the woman with the clipboard asked. Her eyes immediately darted past me, scanning the immaculate, sun-drenched living room. "Yes, I am Elise," I replied, keeping my voice polite and steady. How can I help you? I am Agent Torres with Child Protective Services, and this is Agent Miller, she said, holding up her badge. We received an urgent anonymous tip regarding the safety and welfare of a 5-year-old boy named Leo. The report claims the mother is suffering from a severe psychotic break, living in squalor, and actively physically abusing the child. We need to come inside and inspect the premises immediately. The sheer malice of the lie was breathtaking. Preston and Jasmine had actually done it. In a desperate, vile attempt to gain custody of Leo and control the $40 million trust, they had weaponized the state against me. They wanted to rip my child from my arms. Of course, officer. Please come in, I said, stepping aside and gesturing to my pristine, luxurious home. Let us clear this up right now. The words of Mr. Caldwell echoed in my mind for the next 48 hours. The trap is set. I repeated the phrase to myself like a quiet mantra as Friday morning finally arrived, bringing with it a biting chill that swept off Lake Michigan. I did not feel the crushing anxiety that Preston and his wife undoubtedly expected me to suffer. Instead, a profound, icy calm had settled over my entire body. I went about my morning routine with mechanical precision. I prepared breakfast for Leo, packed his favorite snacks, and drove him to his elite private preschool. As I hugged him goodbye at the classroom door, I felt a surge of fierce protective energy. He was safe, completely shielded from the venomous storm brewing within our family. Today was solely about ensuring he would remain safe forever. Returning to my apartment, I walked into my closet and bypassed my usual comfortable work attire. I needed armor for what was to come. I selected a sharp-tailored charcoal suit that I had purchased after closing a particularly lucrative biomedical consulting contract. I paired it with simple leather heels and pulled my hair back into a sleek, severe style. Looking in the mirror, I did not see the helpless, discarded sister they believed me to be. I saw a highly paid bioinformatics analyst, a woman whose entire career was built on identifying patterns, isolating anomalies, and executing flawless logic. I was ready. I ordered a private car to downtown Chicago, stepping out onto the bustling sidewalk in front of the towering glass skyscraper that housed Mr. Caldwell's prestigious law firm. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and polished steel, reeking of old money and generational power. I gave my name to the security desk and was directed to the private elevators reserved for senior partners and their high-net-worth clients. When I stepped off the elevator on the 42nd floor, a receptionist with a hushed professional voice guided me down a long, quiet corridor. We entered the executive conference room. It was an imposing space dominated by a massive mahogany table and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a dizzying panoramic view of the city below. I chose a seat facing the double doors, folded my hands neatly on the cool surface of the table, and waited. The silence in the room was heavy, thick with the weight of the legacy my parents had left behind. 10 minutes later, the heavy wooden doors swung open with aggressive force. Preston and Jasmine made their grand entrance, treating the solemn legal office like a VIP lounge at a nightclub. They were loud, obnoxious, and practically vibrating with greedy anticipation. Preston strode in wearing a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than my first car. He carried himself with an insufferable swagger, his chest puffed out, acting as though he already owned the building and everyone inside it. He viewed this entire legal proceeding as a mere formality, a quick signature before he was handed the keys to the kingdom. Jasmine walked in right beside him, completely ignoring the somber nature of a post-funeral meeting. As a woman who spent her life clawing for status among the country club elite, she was dressed to ensure everyone knew she had won. The striking African-American socialite wore a vibrant, excessively tight designer dress and carried a limited edition handbag that she placed on the table with a deliberate, heavy thud. But it was her wrist that immediately caught my eye and sent a sudden jolt of cold fury straight through my chest. Gleaming against her dark skin was a vintage solid gold Rolex. I recognized it instantly. It was my late mother's most prized possession. It was the one specific heirloom my mother had explicitly promised to pass down to me, hoping I would one day give it to a daughter of my own. Jasmine had clearly raided my parents' estate, safe the second the funeral ended. She saw my eyes lock onto the watch, and her lips curled into a wicked, triumphant smile. She deliberately pulled back her sleeve, resting her wrist on the mahogany table so the gold would catch the overhead lights. "Look who decided to show up!" Preston sneered, tossing his smartphone onto the table and pulling out the chair at the head of the board, assuming a position of absolute authority. "I honestly expected you to send a proxy, Elise. Did you walk all the way downtown? I hear the homeless shelters are pretty full this time of year. I hope you managed to secure a bottom bunk." I did not blink. I kept my face entirely stone, like employing the exact same emotional detachment I used when analyzing corrupted datasets. "You should save your breath, Preston," I replied, my voice perfectly level and devoid of any warmth. "You are going to need it today." Jasmine let out a sharp, mocking laugh that grated against the quiet dignity of the room. "Oh, please. Look at her trying to act brave. It is actually pathetic. We know you are broke, Elise. Everyone in our circle knows what a disaster you are." She leaned forward, tapping her manicured nails against the table, the Rolex catching the light once more. "You tried to extort us for cash the minute your parents were put in the ground, and it failed. Now you get to sit here and watch Preston inherit the empire while you walk away with nothing but the clothes on your back." Preston chuckled, loosening his expensive tie. "I froze all the accounts, Elise, every single one. You thought you could keep leeching off the family indefinitely, sitting at a computer all day playing scientist, while real adults did the heavy lifting. I am a wealth management director. I handle millions. You play with test tubes. Well, the free ride is officially over. By the end of this meeting, I am cutting you out of this family permanently. I will make sure you cannot even get a job scanning barcodes in this city." They wanted a reaction. They desperately wanted me to scream, to cry, to beg for a fraction of the estate, or to demand the return of my mother's stolen watch. They fed on drama and misery, but I refused to give them a single drop of satisfaction. I knew confronting Jasmine over a piece of jewelry would only derail the larger victory. I let her have her fleeting moment of triumph. I sat there in complete silence, my posture rigid, my expression blank. I let their cruel words hang in the empty air, letting the sheer awkwardness of my silence slowly begin to unnerve them. Jasmine shifted uncomfortably in her chair, visibly annoyed that her taunts were not hitting their mark. "It is so nice inheriting the best pieces of the estate," she added loudly, admiring the watch on her wrist. "Your mother had excellent taste in jewelry. It is a shame she never thought you were elegant enough to wear any of it." Before I could formulate a response, the side door of the conference room opened. Mr. Caldwell stepped into the room carrying a thick leather-bound folder. The atmosphere immediately shifted from a petty high school cafeteria to a serious court of law. The lawyer did not offer any sympathetic smiles or warm greetings. His face was a mask of absolute terrifying neutrality. He walked to the center of the table, set the heavy binder down with a definitive thud, and looked directly at Preston. The trap was ready to spring,